Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. This video is for part 2 of the Natural History Cal. The Natural History Cal has been designed by Christina from A Spoonful of Yarn and is the Scheepjes CAL2020. In part 2 there's an awful lot happening. We'll be making butterflies, we'll be making bees and a lot of details on our blanket. So I'll take you step by step through everything that's happening in part 2. The yarn that I'm using is Scheepjes stonewashed yarn. You can have a stonewash kit, but you can also have a color crafter kit. And do check that you're using the right color at the right round, because we're changing colors almost every round. So like I said, I'll take you step by step through the beautiful part 2 of Natural History Cal. Let's get started. Round 19. I have color 1 on my hook with a slip knot, and in this round we're going to work a corner and then on every stitch work a back post half treble. That's the goal of this round. So yarn over, because we're starting with a standing half treble in any chain 2 corner space. Chain 2, that's your new corner, and then work another half treble in the corner. You're now going to work a back post half treble on every stitch. So, especially around the first one, can be a bit tricky again. So just take your time there. And then move along around every stitch, work a back post half treble. This round is in that essence maybe a bit easier than some of our previous rounds, which had much more detail. So work a back post half treble on every stitch. When you get to the corner on the other side, you're going to work a new corner. So when you get here on this side, going to work a half treble chain 2 half treble. So that's going to be the same in every corner, and then you go all the way around, and there's just going to be a certain point where you find that you have the starting chain 2 from the previous row, and I just need to find where that is. Here. Here you have that starting chain 2. Be sure to skip this stitch. So you're going to work your back post stitch around this entire stitch like that. So basically toppling the invisible join forward. So that's important here. You're going to skip this chain 2. Just work around the stitch that's next to it. But for this row, work a back post half treble on every stitch, and in the corner work a half treble chain 2 half treble. Go all the way around. At the end, close with a slip stitch, and you can also cut your yarn. Round 20. I have color 4 on my hook, and we're going to actually be working in the middle of an edge. And to determine the starting point, we're going to count 19 stitches. Now this corner stitch here, that's stitch number 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and that stitch there is number 19. I'm just going to insert my hook there, because we're going to start with a standing double crochet. So this is stitch number 19, including that first half treble there made in the corner. That's stitch number 1. Continue and work a half treble in the next 2 stitches. So 1 and 2. Chain 1. I'm going to skip a stitch, this stitch here, and come to the next and work a treble. And also in the stitch after you work a treble, so you've worked 2 trebles. Chain 1. And now immediately in the next stitch, so in the next stitch, going to work a 6 treble bobble. So that's in that stitch, that means that 6 trebles worked together in the one stitch. That's a bobble. So that's the first leg, so that's 1 of the treble bobble, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is the last one, 6. Quite a few loops on your hooks. Take them all off in one go. Chain 2, 1, 2. Now we're just going to place a stitch marker. I just need to find my stitch markers. We're going to place a stitch marker in that first of the 2 chains, and that's actually that little chain that looks like it's made that eye there. I'm just going to hook a stitch marker in there, like so. And now we can continue. In the next stitch, the stitch work treble, and also in the stitch after, so you've got 2 trebles. Chain 1, skip a stitch, that stitch, then work 2 half trebles, 1, 2, and on your last stitch work a double crochet. Now you can cut your yarn and open up this loop. Leave these yarn tails attached for the moment. It's easier if you work them away later when you've worked a few more rows. And what you've just worked on one edge, you're going to repeat on your other 3 edges as well. So these few stitches repeat on your other 3 before continuing to the next row. Round 21, I have color 1 on my hook, and we're going to start 2 stitches before the stitch from the previous row. So here was that stitch from previous row, so you go 1, 2 stitches before that, insert your hook for a standing double crochet. In the next stitch work another double crochet. Now I'm going to come up to the stitches from round 20 and work a double crochet in each of these 3. 1, 2, and 3. Work a double crochet in the chain 1 space. Now I have 2 trebles, work a double crochet on each of those. 1 and 2. The chain 1 space is a very small little space here. Work a double crochet in there. Now we're going to work 6 triple trebles together, and this is going to be quite an exercise because we're going to work 3 of the legs in this stitch here that we've skipped, and the 3 other legs on this stitch that we've skipped. So we're going to be having 3 legs either side, and then we're going to bring them all together. A triple treble means 3 times yarn over. 1, 2, 3 times. And now you're going to have to fold your work and fold back because you want to get into that skipped stitch there, and you want to stay in front of your work. So that means you're really folding your work, and you're going to have to really maybe force it even a little bit into that stitch. And what's important is you don't want to go through it because then you're going to be working over your work. You want to stay in front, and there we go, of the stitches. That these orange stitches for me here, you want to stay in front of that. And then that's number 1. So take off 2 loops, take off 2, take off 2. That was 1. Now you want 2 more, so 3 times over. And the second one is usually a bit easier. In that same stitch, loop, and 1, 2, 3 times, and again 2, 3 times yarn over in the same stitch. Pick up your loop, and it's all a little tight, but that's correct. 2, 3. There you go. So now I've got 3 of these legs over there. Now come to the other side to your second skipped stitch. Now we're going to work 3 legs in that position, and this is usually easier because this is forward and not backwards. So again, 3 times yarn over, insert into that stitch, stay in front of your work. You see, this one's just much easier. 2, 3 times, 1, 2, 3 times yarn over, and again 2, 3 times, and the last one 3 times yarn over. 1, 2, 3. At this point you have 7 loops on your hook that you're going to take off in one go. Come to the back here, to the chain 2 space here to the back. So you see you've got that marked chains. You're going to ignore that. This space here. Insert your hook and work a double. On the next 2 trebles, work a double. 2. The chain 1 space, work a double. These last 3 stitches here, work a double on each. And this first one can be a little tricky. That's 1, 2, and here's the last one. You see, I'm just holding on to that yarn tail because that makes it easier for me to get into the stitch. It's 3. And now come back down to these 2 stitches and work a double crochet. 1 and 2. You can cut your yarn and fasten off this loop. If you want to just fashion these long stitches here a little bit. What you've just worked on the one edge, repeat that on the other 3 as well. So you're going to have to work these triple treble stitches 3 more times, and then we're ready for the next row. Round 22, I have color 4 on my hook, and we're again going to start 2 stitches before the last row on round 19. You see, here was the previous row, so I'm going to go 2 stitches before and start there with a standing double crochet. Double crochet on the next stitch as well. And now we're again going to move up on top of these, for me it's the whitish stitches, and work on each of them a double crochet. That's going to be 9 doubles. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and number 9. Here is this last stitch. There's number 9. That's 9. So that's 9 double crochets. Chain 1, and now we're going to make a treble bobble, a 6 treble bobble actually, and we're going to make it in the marked stitch. Now you see there's the stitch with the stitch marker in it, but just look underneath these these 6 trebles here, and you see there's your marked stitch. We're going to work in it from this direction. So I'm going to yarn over, then insert into that marked stitch, and work over it, pick up your loop. So you're working over all of your stitches and complete the first leg. That's 1. You need to do this 5 more times. It's 1, so in that same position, 2, there we go, 2. I'm just going to remove the stitch marker because at this point I don't need it anymore. It's 2. So you're covering that 6 treble, double, triple, treble, bobble. You're covering everything. So it's 3. 4, 5, and here's the last one, 6. Now you have 7 loops on your hook. Take them all off. And as usual, push your hook slightly up. So yarn over, and as I pull through, I just push up. Then you don't get stuck anywhere. So then you just easily pull that through. Chain 2. It's 1, 2, and then that completes your bobble. And now we're going to come down and do the same on this side as we did there. So we're going to work 9 doubles, but the first one you really need to dig for it. If you just look behind all your stitches, there, that's the first stitch. This one is really hidden. So there. And actually now I've also just taken part of the bobble with me. You see that loop? I don't want that loop. It has to be on the other side, that pink purple loop. See, and that's why I say this stitch is really hidden. There we go, now I can see it properly. There it is. So that's 1. And then the rest is easier because it just comes down. 2, 3, 4, 5, just come down 5, so this here is 6, 7, 8, and the last one here, number 9, is on that very last stitch there. 9. I'm going to come down onto row 19 again and work 2 doubles. 1 and 2. There we go. You can cut your yarn and open up the loop to fasten off. And if you want to just fashion your stitches a little bit. What you've done on the one edge, repeat this again as for the previous rows on your other 3 edges as well before continuing. Round 23, I have color 1 on my hook, and we're again going to start on round 19, and we're going to count 8 stitches before the last stitch. So here's the last stitch from the previous row. So then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. So 8 stitches before. Start there with a standing double crochet, and then 2 more doubles. So 1, 2. And the following 3 stitches are half treble. 1, 2, 3. And the 3 stitches after that, the 2 stitches after this, a treble. 2 trebles. It's 1 and 2. We're now going to move up on round 22. On the first 2 stitches we work a half treble. That's 1 and 2. On the following 9 stitches we work a double. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the last one here should fall in the last stitch before the chain space. 9. That's just a checkpoint for you. In the chain 1 space, make 1 double crochet. Chain 3. So 1, 2, 3 chain stitches. I'm going to skip the treble bobble here and come to the chain space on the other side and work a double crochet in that chain space. Now we're going to come down and do the same on this side. I'm going to start with 9 double crochets in the first stitch, and that's this one here, immediately after the chain space. That's 1, I'm going to work 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's the last one, 9. 9 doubles. You should have 2 stitches left here on round 22. In these last 2 stitches you work a half treble on each. So 1 and 2. A bit more yarn. Now we're going to come down to round 19 again. On the first 2 stitches we work a treble. So 1 and 2. Then a half treble, the next 3 stitches. That's 1, 2, and 3. And on the next 3 stitches a double. It's 1, 2, 3. That's it. Cut your yarn and open up this loop. And if all went right, there should be 6 stitches left before you get to the corner. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's also just a checkpoint for you. So that was this one edge. Again, having a look at where we are. What you've just done on the one edge repeats on the other 3 edges as well, and you'll slowly but surely start to see that your octagon is starting to take shape. But first repeat what you've done on the other 3 sides as well. Round 24. I have again color 1 on my hook, and where we're going to start is on any edge. You have here the last stitch we worked in round 23, so then we go 4 stitches before that on round 19. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to insert my hook there and start with this, because we're starting again with the standing double crochet. Double on the next 2 stitches, and actually now we're also starting the repeat. So this double here starts the repeat. That's 1, 2. In your next stitch, a half treble. Now we're going to come up onto round 23 and work a half treble in the first 5 stitches of round 23. That's the first one here. One. My yarn is just not cooperating. That's 1, 5, 2, 3, 4, and 5. half treble on the first 5. Now we're going to work a treble on the next 15 stitches, and that will bring you to the chain space. That's 1, 2, we're going to work 15 trebles, 3, 15. That's 15 trebles. And now here at the chain space, in that chain space work a double treble, that's twice over, work a double treble, chain 2, and another double treble. Slightly turning my work. Now we're going to come down and we're going to start by working 14 trebles because we're going to skip the first stitch. So I'm going to yarn over. So here this first stitch, skipping that stitch, come to the second. That's going to be my first of 14 trebles. So these edges are not symmetrical, and that's correct. That's 2. You'll notice that as we continue that more often you'll have that your edges are not symmetrical. Don't worry about that, that's correct. That's purposefully done by the designer. Continue until you have 14 trebles. Those are the 14 trebles. On the next stitches, next 5 stitches, I'm going to work a half treble. I just need to rotate my work a bit. There we go. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and this here is 5. Now again going to continue here on round 19, a half treble in the first stitch, that's 1, and then a double crochet on the next 3. That's 1, 2, 3. Chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I'm just going to rotate my work because we're now going to continue here on the edge 19 on the other side of the corner. And where to start? Again, 4 stitches before the last stitch of round 23. So you have here 1, 2, 3, 4, so you count back and a double crochet in that stitch. I'm just going to pop the chain here to the back, but we'll get to that later on. And now you're at exactly the same point we were when we started with the first stitch. So now you would work 2 double crochets again, 1, 2, and the next stitch would be a half treble. Because everything here, this is the same as the start here. So everything you've just done, this entire edge, do this 3 more times all the way around. And when you get here, after your chain, what you're going to do is you're going to work a chain 5, and then you'll close here on this first single crochet, sorry, the first double crochet I should say, the first standing double. You're going to close on there with a slip stitch after you've made your last chain 5. And then you can also fasten off. This is your work at the moment. Right now take a moment to here at the back work away these yarn tails. I've already done a few but not all, so there are still quite a few left here on all. See, these ones I've already done. So work away these yarn tails, and when you do so, work into the stitches next to it, so to prevent these gaps from occurring. So you're going to take this thread, I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can actually see what I mean. So when you work away this thread, don't pull it to the left, and you see here there's a gap that arises, but first thread it through these stitches here and only then go that way. That way you'll prevent this gap, and do that with all of these threads. So work away these threads before you continue with the rest of the pattern. Round 25. I have color 4 on my hook with the slip knot, and we're again going to start on the stitches of round 19. Now there aren't that many left. If you look here, you're going to take it one stitch before the stitch of round the 24. So there's one stitch here on round 19. We're just going to go to the next stitch, and you're going to work over the chain 5 space. So you're also going to grab that chain 5 space, and then we're going to start with a standing double crochet. So over this first stitch from round 19 and the chain 5 space, but you're still after the corner here. We're immediately going to come up to the stitches from round 24. So in this first stitch from round 24, work a half treble. Now we're going to work a small repeat up until the chain space up here. Going to be chain 1, skip a stitch, and work a half treble in the next stitch. So it's chain 1, skipping the next stitch, so that's the next stitch, come to the stitch after, and work a half treble in there. You're going to do this 12 times. So there was 1, 2, skip a stitch, and work a half treble. So this was repeat number 2. Skip a stitch. This is repeat number 3. Continue like this, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then I'll see you here at the chain 2 corner space just above the B, because then you'll have done 12 repeats. You need to do one more repeat, chain 1, skipping the stitch, and then number 12 falls exactly in the stitch before the chain space. Then in the chain space here above the B, work a half treble, chain 2, and a half treble. In this space, work a half treble, chain 2, and a half treble. Now we're going to come down, and this edge works similar, but not exactly the same, because like I said, it's going to be a bit asymmetrical here and there. You're going to work a half treble in the first stitch. That's going to be that stitch there. It might be, so be sure that you don't miss it. So this is a long stitch here, a half treble in there. And now we're going to repeat the same idea. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and work a half treble. But now you're only going to do this 11 times. So again, chain 1, skip a stitch, and work a half treble. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and a half treble. So I've now worked 3 repeats with you. Continue until you're roughly about here, then you'll have done 11. Then I'll see you back there. Got one more repeat to do. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and work a half treble. You should have one stitch left on round 24 before you get to the chain 5 space. Chain 1, you're going to skip this last stitch and come down to round 19, and on the first stitch work a double, and while you do so also work over the chain 5 space. So you're going to cover that chain 5 space with the double crochet. Chain 3, 2, 3, then turn your work, rotate your work I should say, and now come to the other side of the corner where you've got the 2 stitches from round 19, the one that's closest to round 24. this stitch here and over the chain space. I've still got 2 yarn tails here, but over that chain space work a double crochet. So you're also covering the chain space. And this stitch is exactly the same as the stitch we started with, that first standing double crochet. So everything you've just done on this edge, you would now repeat on your next edge as well. Go all the way around, and when you're finished, you're going to work a chain 3 and then close on this first stitch. And then you can also fasten off because the next round will be a new color. Round 26, I have color 1 on my hook again, and we're going to start in the corner space. You've got here the flower petals. In the chain corner space from round 19, you're going to work in there and at the same time covering the chain 3 and 5 spaces to the back. I'm going to start with a standing half treble. I'm going to yarn over and hold on to that, then insert into this chain space and over all of those spaces as well. So I'm going to grab all of them together with a half treble. Chain 2 and then another half treble through that same space. So connecting all those chain spaces together. We're now going to work on the edge. What we're going to do is we're going to skip the stitch from round 19, that's in here, and we're going to skip the first stitch from round 25, that orange stitch there, and then come to the second stitch of round 25, and there work a half treble. And that half treble. Now in the chain spaces, these chain spaces, we're going to work 2 half trebles in each of them. We're going to do that 12 times. So this here is, so that's 2 half trebles in every chain space. So that's 1. Again, so you would do this 12 times. So 2 half trebles, and you're only going to work in the chain spaces. So I've now done this 3 times. Going to continue, work 2 half trebles in every chain space, and then I'll see you here when you're doing your last set, and this will be set number 12. I'll see you at that point. I've done this repeat 12 times, so the last set of 2 half trebles is in that last chain space. I have a few more stitches left before you get to the top here. I'm going to skip the next stitch, that's that stitch, going to skip that, and in the stitch just before the chain space, work a half treble. There's a half treble in there. Now here at the top, in the chain space just above the B, work a half treble, chain 2, and another half treble. Now we're going to come down. You're going to skip the first stitch, that's this stitch here, you're going to skip that and come to the second stitch and work a half treble in there. Now you're at the chain spaces again, and in all these chain spaces work 2 half trebles. That's going to do that 12 times. So this is the same as on the other side. 1, 2, and the next one, 1, 2. So I've done this 3 times. Continue until you've done 12. Then you'll be at this point here, and I'll see you back there when you've done 12 of these repeats. When you've done the repeat 12 times, you're back at the starting corner. You have one more stitch here on round 25. I'm going to work a half treble in here. Now we're going to come down to round 19, And again in the corner space from round 19, working over all these chain spaces, work half treble, chain 2, half treble. In that space, so half treble, chain 2, and a half treble, and you're again covering all those chain spaces, securing them to your work. And this corner is the same as the corner we started with here. So everything you've just done, do that 3 more times, and you get to the first stitch. After you've done your last half treble, close on there with a slip stitch, and then you can also fasten off. So this is what your work looks like at the moment. Before we continue, I'll actually show you how to place a few markers. I'm going to place 4 markers on every edge. I'd like to show you where to place those markers before we continue with the next round. So we're going to start at the corner. So here's the leaf. So on this corner, so there's the B, not the B corner, the other corner. We're going to come to round 24, and those are these stitches that we skipped here. We're going to be marking 4 of them on every edge. Come to the 4th skipped stitch. So you see here's number 1, it's 2, it's 3, and 4. 4th one. Mark that with a stitch marker. So you see stitch number 4. And now again 4 stitches along. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This one, mark that as well. So it's the 4th stitch and the 8th stitch. Now we're going to come to the other side here. So here's the B, and now we're going to count 5 spaces down. So this is the corner from the B. Then the 5th space, skipped stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mark the stitch. And the last one you're going to mark on this edge, again 4 stitches on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and mark the stitch. So stitch number 4 and number 8, counting up, and counting down, stitch number 5 and number 9. Mark these 4 positions on your other 3 edges also. Round 27, I have color 2 on my hook, and we're going to start in the same stitch as we have closed with the slip stitch the previous round. So that's where the stitch where we're going to start. I'm going to start in there with the standing half treble. I'm going to yarn over, and in that same stitch, just over the slip stitch join, just covering that slip stitch. Ooh. Hold on to all your loops. Work a standing half treble. There you go. We're now going to come to the corner space, and this is also going to be the start of the repeat unit. In the corner, work a half treble, chain 2, and a half treble. Half treble, chain 2, and a half treble. That's your new corner. I'm going to skip the first stitch. Now that's that little stitch there, that hidden stitch. I'm going to skip that stitch and work a half treble in the next stitch. Skip that stitch and come to the next and work a half treble. I'm going to come down and work a front post double treble around the corner stitch here from round 19. So once over is a treble, twice over is a double treble. Then come down and you're having to fold your work a front post around that stitch from round 19. Grab your yarn and complete the stitch. So that's a nice long stitch there. Going to skip a stitch to the back and then work 10 half trebles. So we're going to skip the next stitch. So let's see, there's the last stitch worked. So we're going to skip that stitch and come to the next. That's here, and that's going to be the first of 10 half trebles. That's one. So now we work 10 of them. 2, 3, and 10. 10 half trebles. We're now going to start working the butterfly, and these next few stitches are a little tricky. Now I'll try to take it slow. Start with the chain 2. Chain 2. Come to the next stitch and work a slip stitch in here. So slip stitch. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now in the same stitch, so still in that same opening as where you have the slip stitch, work 5 trebles. So in this, still in the same position, going to work 5 trebles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 trebles. Chain 2. 1, 2. And now we're going to work a front post treble around the post of the stitch that we're currently in. So I'm just going to take the loop out of the hook. So this is the stitch we're currently in. So here, this is the post that we're going to work around there, because this is the top of the stitch, and this is the post that goes along with it. So we're going to work a front post treble around that same stitch. So yarn over for the treble, then come around that stitch and work the front post treble. This is the point where it gets really very full, and there's just an awful lot happening here. So that was the front post treble. Now chain 2. And now we're going to come to the next stitch, and now it's very important to fold your work to the side, because there's the next stitch. So if you fold it to the side, you should be able to see it because it's really hidden by your work. And in that stitch, work 5 trebles, chain 3 and a slip stitch. In that stitch, I'm going to start with the 5 trebles. That's 1, just need a bit more yarn, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Now you're going to come down, and you might have to push those trebles to the side, because in that same position, you want to work a slip stitch. And there we go, it's a slip stitch, then chain 2, and then you've survived the first bit of the first butterfly. In the next 11 stitches, work a half treble, and that'll bring you here to above the B. Now this is the stitch you're currently. So this here is your next stitch, because that's the one you just worked in. So this is your next stitch. You're going to work 11 half trebles. So that's 1, 2, 3. Continue until you have 11. 4, 4 and 11. It's 11 half trebles. We're now going to come down and work a front post double treble around the double treble from round 24. So that's this longer stitch you have here. So twice over, around that stitch, work a front post double treble. 2, 3. I'm going to skip the next stitch here to the back. So again, that's the last stitch worked. Going to skip this stitch and then come to the next, and that'll be your last stitch before the corner. So that's just a checkpoint for you. In that last stitch, work a half treble. Then you're at the corner here above the B. So here's the B, so you're at the corner above the B, and work a half treble, chain 2, half treble, half treble, chain 2, and a half treble. And now we're going to come down and work something similar as we did here, but just slightly asymmetrical, but similar. So we're going to start by skipping the first stitch. I'm going to skip, so that is the hidden stitch again. I'm going to skip that stitch and work a half treble in the next stitch. And now come down and work a front post double treble around the double treble from round 24 again. Just twice over, around that stitch, pick up and complete the double treble. Skipping a stitch again to the back. See, I'm skipping a stitch, that stitch there, and now work 12 half trebles. So that's different to the other. To here we had only 11, and now you're going to work 12. So that's 2. Continue until you have 12, and then we'll work another butterfly. 12 half trebles. Now we're going to work that butterfly again. So one stitch at a time, keeping your wits about you. Start with a chain 2. Then in the next stitch, work a slip stitch. Chain 3. And in that same stitch, 5 trebles. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trebles. Chain 2, and then again that front post stitch is around the post of this stitch. So that's we're going to work the front post treble around. Yarn over, come down, and work the front post treble. Chain 2, and now do the reverse order in the next stitch, and again fold your work to the side and you can really see that next stitch. I'm going to start with 5 trebles in there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 3, and then come down and work a slip stitch in that stitch. And there we go. And that's your next bit of the butterfly made. Chain 2, and that's the next stitch. Work 9 half trebles. So 1, 2, I just need a bit more yarn, 2, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the last one here, 9. So that's 9 half trebles. Now you're almost at the next corner. So I'm going to work a front post double treble again here around this corner stitch from round 19, and that's going to it's just like the first one we did here. It's going to echo that stitch on the other side. So twice over, come around that stitch from round 19, work the front post double treble, skipping a stitch, skip the next stitch, and then on your last stitch before you get to your chain 2 corner space, work a half treble, and then your next stitch should be the chain 2 corner space where you work a new corner. Chain half treble, chain 2 half treble, and this new corner here, this is actually the start of your second repeat. So everything we've just done, and that's quite a bit, do this 3 more times. When you're all the way around, you're going to close on this standing half treble here. So you close on that stitch with a slip stitch, and then you can also fasten off. Round 27A. I have color 3 on my hook with the slip knot, and we're going to start here in. You have these sets of 2 marked stitches. You have 8 of these sets. Here's the butterfly. So take the stitch that's before the butterfly. I'm just going to insert in that marked stitch with a slip stitch. I'm actually just going to remove the stitch marker because it's actually slightly in the way. So in that marked stitch, attach with a slip stitch. There you go. Chain 3, 2, 3, and now we're going to come to the butterfly. You have the 5 trebles. Those 5 trebles we're going to work into. In the first of the 5 trebles, work a double crochet, double, half treble, treble, next stitch work a half treble and a double, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we're going to come to the, I just need a bit more yarn. Now we're just going to come to the next set of 5 trebles, so skipping all the chains and everything else. So the first stitch there, work a double crochet on that stitch, a half treble, treble, a half treble, and a double crochet again. There you go. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to come down and work a slip stitch through the second marked stitch. And now it's important to not twist this chain in any way, but just come straight front to back and work that slip stitch. You can cut your yarn and open up your slip knot, open up your loop, and you can remove the marker. These 2 threads, just pull them to the back so that you can work them away easier. So I'm just going to pull them to the back, and that's what this little butterfly looks like now. When you've completed the one butterfly, you repeat exactly the same on all your 7 other butterflies. So you're going to do these stitches around 27A 8 times, once on every butterfly, and then you can remove all your stitch markers. Round 28, color 2 on my hook. I'm going to start in the stitch where we close with a slip stitch in round 27. Start with a standing treble, just in that stitch, kind of covering the slip stitch, and start with a standing treble. The next stitch, also work a treble. Now we're at the corner stitch, and this is also the start of the repeat unit. In the corner, work a treble, chain 2, and a treble. I'm going to skip the first stitch, so that stitch, and then come to the second and start working 11 trebles in that second stitch. So this is the first of 11, and then we'll get to the butterfly again. It's to work 11 trebles. This is 3, 11 trebles, and now you're also slightly behind the butterfly. I'm going to skip the last stitch. You have 1 stitch left here, that stitch. I'm going to skip that stitch and we're going to come to the butterfly. And let me just show you where we're going to be working. If you look at the butterfly, right here in the middle, you have this front post stitch. We're going to be working in the 2 chain spaces, left and right, so either side of this post stitch. And when we work in this chain space, we're also going to work over the chain 5 that's here to the back. So we're going to work over these 2, and then we're going to come to the other hole and work over those 2. That's what we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to pick up the loop. Now we're going to work these same combination of stitches. We're going to start with working 5 trebles in this first chain 2 space. So that's before the treble there, the front post treble. And then so working over the chain 5 space to the back. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trebles. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to come down and work a slip stitch in this same space. There. That's your first butterfly petal. Now we come to the next chain 2 space and insert in there, and we're going to work a slip stitch again. Chain 3, and once surprise you, 5 trebles in the same space, and all the time covering that chain 5 space to the back. This here is 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got 2 more butterfly petals. I'm going to come back to our stitches here on the back, and if you just look closely here, you see there's that first stitch. I'm going to skip that and come to the second. In that second, work a treble. So you see there's a chain space, first stitch, second stitch, treble, and that is then the first of 13, and that'll bring you to the corner. That's 1, 2, 3, and you're going to work 13. There you go. So that's 13 trebles, and that last one falls just before the corner. And then your corner, that's 1 treble, chain 2, and 1 treble. And now you're above the bee again. I'm going to come down on this edge and work very similar stitches. I'm going to skip the first stitch. That's on that stitch there. Skip that stitch. Then come to the next. And this is the first of 13. So 1, 2, and work 13 trebles. 3, 13. Trebles. I'm going to come to the butterfly, and here we're going to do the same as we did on the first butterfly. So in the chain 2 spaces, going to be working and covering the chain 5 here to the back. I'm going to start in the first chain space, so that's before the front post treble here. Insert your hook through the chain 2 space and cover the chain 5 to the back, and work 5 trebles. That's 1 in that space, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Chain 3, and again work a slip stitch in that space. So this is the same as the previous butterfly. Come to the next chain space, insert your hook, chain 3, and 5 more trebles in that same space. And again covering, so you can just insert your hook through the entire space, so cover that entire chain 5 space. That's 3, 4, and 5. There you go. Come back here behind the butterfly and skip the first stitch, that's again this hidden stitch, and come to the second stitch, and then we're going to work 11 trebles. See, I'm skipping that first stitch, come to the second, that's your first treble, I'm going to work 11. That's 2, 3, and then that'll bring you to the corner again. And the last one. So 11 is again exactly before your corner. And then in the corner you start the new repeat, treble, chain 2, treble. This repeat is of course the same as this one here. This corner, oh, where is it? This corner. So everything you've just done on both these edges, both butterflies, repeat 3 more times, and your last repeat you'll omit your final 2 trebles. Then close here on your first stitch with a slip stitch, and you can also fasten off. Round 29, I have color 5 on my hook, and we're going to start in the first stitch after the join. That's important. You see, here's the stitch with the join, that's the slip stitch, here's my yarn tail, and I'm going to take the stitch after, so that's the stitch you're going to start. It's a slightly different position to previous rows. So in that second stitch, start in there with a standing treble. To the next stitch, work another treble. Now you're at the corner, and this is the start of your repeat unit. So work a treble in the corner, chain 2, and a treble. So that's your first corner and start of the repeat. Now, on the first little edge, going to work 4 trebles, and this time work in that first stitch also, so it's important here you're also going to work in the first stitch. So that's 4 trebles. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4 trebles. Now I'm going to come down and work a front post double treble around the front post from round 27, so that's twice over, around that stitch, the loop. It's 1, 2, 3 times, taking off 2 loops, skipping a stitch to the back, skipping a stitch to the back, and then work 7 trebles. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here is number 7. Falls on that last treble there. That's number 7. I'm going to make a chain 4. 3, 4. I'm going to work a front post treble around this stitch right here in the middle of the butterfly. Put yarn over with front post treble right in the middle of the butterfly. Then chain 4, 3, 4. Now I'm just going to come skipping all these posts, and here again on the trebles I'm going to skip that first treble, so this stitch here, I'm going to skip that, then come to the second stitch and work a treble, and then that's the first of 8. But before I continue, just pop these chains to the back so that the butterfly is actually in front of the chain spaces. So you can really see the butterfly, so your chains are to the back here. Okay, but that was the first treble of 8, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And my yarn is a little tight. 8 trebles. So I've skipped that first stitch there, that's important, and then 8 trebles. Now I'm going to work a front post double treble around this post here from round 27. So it's yarn over twice, around the post stitch there, 2, 3, skipping a stitch to the back again, and then work 4 more trebles. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. There you go. At this point you should be at the corner, and you're at the corner above the B. In the corner, work a treble, chain 2, and another treble. I'll turn my work a bit. I'm going to skip the first stitch. That stitch, I'm going to skip that stitch and then come to the second and work 4 trebles. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again work a front post double treble around the post stitch from a few rows down. So that's similar. So this edge is again similar to the edge on this side. I'm going to skip the next stitch. So skip the next stitch and then work 8 trebles. So that's 1, 2, 3, 7, and here's number 8. Chain 4, so I'm going to do the same on this butterfly. Chain 4, and then a front post treble right here in the middle of the butterfly. And then chain 4 again. And then on the next 7 stitches here, skipping the treble group, there's the first stitch, 7 trebles. 1, 2, but actually before I continue I just want to pop these around again, just to bring that butterfly nicely forward. Just fashion it a little bit, really make the butterfly look pretty. That was 2 trebles, I need 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. There we go. It's going autopilot. 7 trebles. A front post double treble again around this stitch down below. Just twice over and around that post. Skipping a stitch to the back, skip a stitch, and then a treble in the last 4 stitches before you get to the corner again. 2, 3, and 4. And now you're at the corner again, and this is going to be the exact same corner as the corner we started with. So this one here. So everything you've just done, repeat 3 more times. In your final repeat, you'll of course omit these last 2 trebles. Close on the first stitch. And that's this is a nice fast round, especially compared to the butterfly rounds. And then you can also fasten off. Round 30. I have color 3 on my hook, and we're going to start in the same stitch as the join, so in that same stitch with a standing treble in that stitch, and then just gonna work over. So I just kind of hold on to my yarn tail and then I work over the slip stitch, then that's the easiest. On the next 2 stitches, work a treble also. So 1 and 2. We're at the first corner, and in this corner we also start the repeat. That's repeat the corners again, a treble, chain 2. Treble. That's your first corner. I just need to rotate a bit. A treble in the first 6 stitches, and also here in the first stitch. That's 1. That's 1. I'm gonna work 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the last one here, 6. Now I'm going to do a tiny repeat unit, chain 1, skip the next stitch and then work a treble. So I'm going to skip the stitch and then work a treble. So once we do it 3 times, so it's chain 1, skip a stitch, work a treble. It's 2 times, chain 1, skip a stitch, and work a treble. That's 3 times. Again, chain 1. You've got 1 stitch left here before you get to the butterfly. You're going to skip that stitch. Now going to work on the butterfly. You have the 5 trebles there. We're going to work a treble 5 together over those 5 stitches. So yarn over, then come to the first treble, insert and take off a loop, so that's 1, and then come to the second, 2, and then the third, 3, and here's the 4th stitch, 4, put my yarn and then come to the 5th stitch to find it. Here it is, and 5. So I've got 5 legs, one in every one of the trebles. Now we take them all off in one go. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to work a double crochet here in this treble here, this front post treble that's here in the middle. So in there, work a double crochet, and then just make sure to pop the chain back to the back. You want this forward while you're working the stitches. You want this to be to the back here. Again, a chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the next butterfly here again a treble 5 together, and that's the first stitch. You just need to look at where your stitches are. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and take them all off in one go again. Chain 2, and fashion butterfly a little bit. You can see it's really looking like a pretty butterfly. Now come here down to these trebles. Going to skip the first 2 stitches, so that's 1, 2, skip, and then come to the 3rd stitch and work a treble in that stitch. Chain 1, and skip a stitch. And that was 1. It's going to do it 3 times again, so it's a treble, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then again a treble, chain 1, and skip a stitch. In the next stitch we work the first of 6 trebles. It's 1, 2, 3, almost to the corner, 3, 4, 5, and there you go, 6. Now you've done the first edge. You're at the corner above the B, and in the corner here we work a new corner, so that's going to be a treble, chain 2, and another treble. Now we come down and we're going to basically repeat the same idea. In the first stitches, we're going to skip the first stitch, so that's this stitch, going to skip that, and then in the stitches after work 6 trebles. So you're going to skip that first stitch, that's really important here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now you have that little repeat again. Just chain 1, skip the next stitch, work a treble 3 times again. Just chain 1, skip a stitch, work a treble. That's 2, chain 1, skip a stitch, and work a treble. That's 3. Chain 1. Now we're again going to skip this last stitch before we get to the butterfly. My chains have just popped forward. Make sure that to the back we when you're working in the butterfly, because now we can work that treble 5 together again. So in the first stitch, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and take them all off. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Find the front post stitch, work a double crochet in that stitch, and fashion your pretty little butterfly wings. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again here, find the butterfly wings and gonna work that treble 5 together again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and take them all off. Chain 2. Skip 1 stitch after the butterfly, so this time only the first stitch. Then in the second stitch work a treble. Treble. Chain 1, skip the stitch, that's once. Treble, chain 1, skip the stitches twice, and then treble, chain 1, skip a stitch is 3 times. And then finish with 6 trebles. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And next up is your first corner. So this corner here is going to be the same as the corner we started with. This is a beautiful round where you're really putting details on those butterflies. Continue this working all the repeats, so 3 more times, and you get to the first stitch, close on that stitch and fasten off. Round 31, I have color 5 on my hook. I'm going to start in the same stitch as that you have the join. So here's the stitch with the join. I'm going to start in there with the standing double crochet. I'm going to insert my hook in there and just fiddle around between that slip stitch and cover the slip stitch. So standing double crochet. And then a double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3 stitches. Now we're going to start the repeat. In the corner space, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 double crochet. Going to skip the first stitch, so that's in this stitch here. Going to skip that, then come to the second, and it's going to be the first of 6 doubles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. 6 double crochets. A series of chain spaces here. In the first chain space, work 1 double crochet. I'm going to come down and work a front post double treble around the post from a few rows down, so 2 times over. Come around this front post, and we work another front post around it. 1, 2, 3 times. Take off 2 loops. going to skip the next stitch. That's this treble here, skip that. Then come to the chain space and work 2 double crochets in the chain space. 2 doubles in that space. I'm actually going to do that in 3 chain spaces. So that was the first one. Here's the second chain space. So 2 double crochets in there. And the third chain space. And that's just before the butterfly here. So 2 doubles in there. 1, 2. Now we're going to be working in and around the butterfly. So those were the last 2 double crochets. Chain 2. And now a front post treble around the front post treble from round 29. So that's the grey one here. So sorry, just once over because it's a treble. Then around this stitch, the front post treble. Two, chain 2, and then again a front post treble. Oh, sorry, that was not a chain 2, only a chain 1. Chain 1, and then another front post treble around the same stitch. So if I just look a little like this, so it's a front post treble, chain 1, and a front post treble all around this center front post stitch you have here. Then chain 2, now it's the chain 2. And now we're going to come to the other side of the butterfly. In the chain, I'm going to work again in the chain spaces. So in the first chain space, work 2 double crochets. 2. Come to the next chain space, work 2 double crochets. 1, 2, and then the third chain space here, work 2 double crochets. 1, 2. Front post double treble again around the front post double treble from 2 rows down. That's twice over, and then take off 2 loops. You take off 2 loops, take off 2 loops. There you go. Going to skip the chain space here, so that chain space is going to leave that unworked. And then come onto the first treble here where you work your first double crochet. And that's the first of 7. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Rotate, work a bit, and you're at the second corner. So this is the corner that's above the B. Here you work a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet. So now we're on the second part of the edge. You can work a double crochet in the first 7 stitches, and now you do work in the first stitch here. So in the first stitch, your first double, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 double crochets. Won't surprise you, again a front post double treble around the double treble from a few rows below, around 29 I believe. You really see this nice line that we're building here. That was the front post treble. You have the next chain space. This chain space is going to skip that chain space and the treble that's over here, and then you have 3 more chain spaces. We're going to work 2 double crochets in each of those. So skip all of this, come to the second chain space here and work 2 doubles in there. So that's 1, 2, go to the next space, 1, 2, and here's the last space, 1, 2, 2 double crochets in all 3 of those. On to the second butterfly. Chain 2, a front post treble around the center stitch here and in the butterfly, so around the front post treble from round 29. Chain 1, only chain 1, and another front post treble around the same stitch. And chain 2 when you're on the other side. Come to the other side of the butterfly. In the first chain space here work 2 double crochets. In the second one work 2 doubles. And in the third space work 2 doubles. There we go. We're at the front post again, so twice over. Double treble, front post double treble. You can see it's the same rhythm. Skip the chain space here and come to the double crochet, or sorry, to the treble, and work a double crochet on that, and that's the first of 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go, 7 double crochets. And now you're at the corner where we started with again, because this is above the leaves here. So everything you've just done, and it's quite a stretch, these stretches are becoming longer. Repeat this 3 more times, and when you get to your first stitch and your last repeat, you'll have less stitches, of course. Close on your first stitch, and you can also fasten off. Round 31A is actually a decoration round, and what you're going to be doing is on your butterflies you're going to be making 4 French knots. You see, on this butterfly I've already made the French knots. You're going to be making 4 on each butterfly. Now where you're going to make them is on, you see here's the treble 5 together in the center stitch of that treble 5 together on either side, and here at the bottom you've got these stitches you made in 27A. You have the half treble that's at the bottom. On those 2 you're also going to be making a French knot. So I'll show you how to make a French knot, but if you've made these before and you're comfortable with that, please make them in the way that you are familiar with. If you have done embroidery before, you'll most likely be familiar with how to make a French knot. I'm going to make the French knot using color 5, so I have a bit of color 5 yarn on my needle, and I'm just going to start in this butterfly here. I'm going to start here on the bottom, so you've got here the 5 stitches, and on a half treble here, and that one we're going to be making the first French knot. I'm just going to come to the back of the petal and just attach my yarn, then attach it by just pushing through the stitches. Then we're going to come back. You just want to secure this yarn tail because it's a pity if your knots come undone. And now I just want to see where I need to go. So here are the 5 stitches. I need to go to this stitch here. That's where I want to go. So I just look at the back. Okay, we need to go there. And I just thread through where I am right now to where I want to go. And then I can stick my needle out to the front. that's the position where we're going to make the French knot. Now, to make a French knot, you're going to wrap your yarn over twice around your needle, and then bring this close to the starting to your fabric. So not up here, but really close as you can get it to your fabric. And then you're going to push the needle back through your fabric, and you're going to push back close to the point where it's coming out. So that's where it's coming out, but not exactly the same point, because then you're going to pull the knot to the back. So just ever so slightly next to the position where your yarn is coming out, you're going to be pushing back. So I'll push my needle back here. So to make the knot, yarn over twice, slide those loops to the position where your fabric, where the yarn comes through the fabric, and then insert and push back a needle, and really hold your finger on this working loop. You want to hold it as close as you can to where you're making the knot, so that nothing happens to this working yarn. And pull through, and then slowly guide this loop, and there you go. And that's your French knot made. And you don't want it to be pulled through to the back. So that's your little French knot. And now you're going to make the next one. That would be, for example, you could come up here, or you can go there, but then I'm going to go up here. So then thread your yarn through the back to your next position, and just need to, in the beginning it's of course just a few big steps, but then now I'm at the right pedal, and I want to go here, and then I'm just going to make sure to miss this chain space, so that I don't accidentally connect to that chain space, because that's not what I want to do. And then I believe I need to be here, and yes, I want to be here. I'm just going to pull forward, and I'll show you the French knot again. So twice over, bring it as close as you can to your working position, insert your needle, push back, and you can, you see there, I've pushed through the chain space here. I don't actually want to do that. There, just want to miss that chain space. And finish the French knot. And there it is. So now I've made 2 of these French knots. Here I've made it on the half treble, and here I've made it right in the center. I'm going to do exactly the same on this side here in the center, and then here on the half treble. And then you've completed 1 butterfly, and you need to do this on all your butterflies. So take your time for all these French knots. It's a lovely little decoration, and when you're ready you can continue with the next round. So I'm going to thread this through 1 stitch at a time. Round 32. Here's my yarn. I have colored 2 on my hook with a slip knot, and we're going to start in the same stitch as the join from round 31, and it's that double crochet there. See, there's the slip stitch. I'm going to join in there with a standing double crochet. So I'm just going to insert into the same stitch, and then cover the slip stitch with this double crochet, and then a double crochet on the next 4 stitches. That'll bring you to the corner. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. Now we're going to start the repeat, and this time the repeat really is from corner to corner. There's not the left and right hand sides are the same. if you look at the so all these smaller parts, you now have 8 repeats and not 4. I'm going to start in the corner, a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet. There you go. Then on the edge, I'm going to skip the first stitch. So this stitch, I'm going to skip that stitch, then come to the next and work. And this is going to be the first of 14, and it'll bring you to your butterfly. So this is 2, 3, 4, continue until you have 14, then you're at the butterfly. 14. Got 14 double crochets, and then your next stitch should be here, the chain 2 space. In the chain 2 space, work 1, 2 double crochets. Then you come to the chain 1 space, it's kind of in between the V here, work 1 double crochet in there. And then you've got the next chain 2 space, work 2 double crochets. So 1 and 2. So I've got 2, 1, 2. Then on the next bit until the next corner, so until here, I'm going to skip the first stitch, so that stitch, I'm going to skip that stitch, then come to the second stitch and work a double crochet, and then that's again the first of 14. So that's 1, this is 2, and when you've got 14, that'll bring you to the next corner space, so work 14 double crochets. 14. There we go, 14 double crochets. Next up is the corner, and this corner is the start point of your next repeat. So again, a double crochet, so double, chain 2, and a double. And now it doesn't matter that it's above the B, because now your next repeat is going to be exactly the same as what you've just done. So this corner is the same as that corner. So these stitches, repeat this all the way around, and when you're here at the end, your last repeat, you'll of course omit these last 5 double crochets because you already worked them. Close on that stitch and then leave your yarn attached for the next round. Round 33, and we're just going to continue with the yarn you already have attached. So I'm attached here with the slip stitch in the first stitch from the previous round. Chain 1, this is not a stitch. Then in the same position, make a first double crochet, and that's there, so in that same stitch. And now a double crochet in the next 5. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches. The corner, that marks the start of the repeat. So in the corner, a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet. I just need to rotate my work. My blanket is really getting just ever so slightly bigger. I'm going to skip the first stitch, there's that stitch, and then in the next work a double crochet, and then that's the first of 11, and it'll bring you to about here. That's 1, 2, 3, 11 double crochets. I'm going to come down and work a front post double treble, so twice over. Just fold your work and really come around that front post double from a few rows down. Just give this stitch also just a little bit of room to breathe, so don't make it too tight. I'm going to skip a stitch to the back. See, there I'm skipping a stitch, and then come to the stitch after and work a double crochet, and that's the first of 10. 2, 3, work 10, 4, 10, so that's 10 double crochets. And now again a front post double treble, but this time coming down to the previous double treble, and work a front post stitch around it. Skipping a stitch to the back again. See there I'm skipping a stitch, then come to the next stitch and work a double crochet, and this is again the first of 11. 2, and that should bring you to the corner. 4, 11 double crochets, and then that should bring you exactly to the next corner. And in the next corner you start a new repeat. So here work again a corner, so everything you've just done. So here a new corner, double, chain 2, double, then all these stitches. I'm going to repeat this 7 more times. On your last repeat you'll of course skip the last few double crochets because you've already worked them. Close on your first stitch with a slip stitch, and then you can also fasten off. Round 34, I have color 1 on my hook, and we're going to start in a corner space, and actually the corner space we're going to start in is the one that's closest to the join. So here's the join from the previous round, and that corner space there. I'm going to start there with the standing half treble. So I'm just going to yarn over, then insert into that chain 2 corner space. Start with a standing half treble. Then chain 2 and another half treble in that same space. And that's your first corner made. So half treble, chain 2, half treble. The repeats along the edge. A chain 1, so this is the start of the repeat, chain 1, and now we're going to skip 2 stitches. So you've got, here's the first stitch, I'm going to skip that, and the second stitch, and then we're going to come to the third stitch and work a half treble. So it's 1, 2, skip, come to the third and work a half treble. We are going to work chain 1, skip a stitch and a half treble. I'm going to do that 16 times. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and a half treble. So that was once. So you're going to do 15 more, 16 in total. So chain 1, skip a stitch, a half treble. That was 2 times. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and a half treble. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and a half treble. So this was 4 times, going to work 16, so I'm going to make a jump in the video. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and work a half treble. I'm going to make a jump in the video when I've done this about 13 or 14 times. What you can see now is that half treble, this number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, this one falls exactly here in your front post stitch, and that's just a checkpoint for you if you've skipped the correct number of stitches, particularly here at the beginning. But repeat this, chain 1, skip a stitch and work a half treble until you've done that 16 times. I've done the repeat 15 times, so I need to do once more. So chain 1, skip a stitch and work a half treble. At this point you have 1 stitch left before you get to the corner. So chain 1, then we're going to skip this last stitch and come to the corner where you work a new corner. It would be a half treble, chain 2 and a half treble. And this corner marks the start of your next repeat. So this edge, it's a nice quick round. Gonna repeat this all the way around. And when you get to the first stitch, close here on the standing half treble with a slip stitch and leave your yarn attached. So just at the end of the round, just on the last chain one, and close here on this half treble, and that can be sometimes a bit hard to get into because of the way the stitch looks. There we go. So then close on that stitch with a slip stitch and then move to the chain 2 space with another slip stitch. There you go. Leave your yarn attached for the next round. Round 35. Currently in that chain space. Then chain 1. This does not count as a stitch. In the corner, make a new corner. That's also the start of the repeat. You're going to work 2 doubles, chain 2 and 2 doubles. Just 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then just move them up a bit because you need to make room, and then 2 more double crochets in that space. So this is a bit of a tight squeeze. So you've got 2 doubles, chain 2, 2 doubles in that corner. Then along the edge, in the first 7 chain spaces, I'm going to work 2 double crochets in each. So this is the first one. That's 2 double crochets, so that's once, 2, 3, so you work 2 double crochets in every space. 3, going to do that 7 times. 3, this is 4. So you're getting this nice pillars. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 5, 6, and 7. There you go. Just check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh no, look, I did it 8 times. Just you have to keep counting. Let me just check now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. So in 7 chain spaces, work 2 double crochets in each. In the next chain space, work 1 double crochet, only 1. Now we come down and work a front post double treble around this front post double treble here. So it's twice over. I'm just going to fold my work and just get around that stitch. Give this stitch some room to breathe. So that's 1, 2, 3 times, taking off 2 loops. Now we're going to come to the next chain space, and that's this one here, because this space here already contains a stitch. You can actually see it sitting there. So not this one, the next one. Work 2 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, and also in the next space. You're going to do this twice. 1, 2. To the next front post double treble, another front post double treble. And again, give this stitch just a little room to breathe. Okay. And the next chain space, this one here exactly to the back, work 1 double crochet in there. If all went well, we have 7 chain spaces left before the corner. See 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and work 2 double crochets in each of those spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, just rotate my work a bit, 4, and I'm almost to the end of a yarn ball, and then the yarn doesn't cooperate anymore, and 6 and 7 times. There we go. Next up is the corner, and here you're going to start a new corner, so this is also the start of a new repeat, so that's 2 doubles, chain 2 and 2 doubles, so the same as we started here. So everything you've just worked along this edge, all these double crochets, do that all the way around, and when you get to the first stitch that has first double, that's that one there, close on that stitch, and then you can also fasten off. Round 36. I have color 2 on my hook here, and we're going to start in the same stitch where we just did the slip stitch join, so there's that double crochet there, and this is a little full here, so insert your hook in there. I'm going to start with a standing double again in the same stitch as the join, covering the slip stitch. There we go. And then work a double crochet in the next stitch also. Then starting the repeat in the corner, so you've got the chain 2 space, work 1 double crochet, 1 double, chain 2 and 1 double. There we go. Let me just rotate my work again. Going to skip the first stitch, that's on that stitch, skip that stitch, and then come to the second, work a double crochet, and that's the first of 19. So that's 1, 2, 3. When you have 19, you'll be about halfway. So work 19 of these. 19 double crochets, and now you're halfway your edge, and you see it's the butterfly. We're now going to connect this bow that we've been making here with a front post double treble 2 together. Okay, so it's yarn over twice for the double treble, then come around the first leg, which will be, you'll have to bend your work a bit back, then take off 2 loops and take off 2 loops, just 2, and stop. Again, yarn over twice, and I'll come to the next front post double treble and work a leg around that as well. So take off 2 loops, take off 2 loops. At this point you have 3 loops on your hook, and I'm purposefully just bringing them together like this, so that's to prevent my loops from opening up. Then yarn over and take them all off. And that's the front post double treble 2 together. To the back, you're going to skip a stitch. So you see there I'm skipping 1 stitch, that stitch, and then come to the next stitch and work a double crochet, and that's again the first of 19, and then that'll bring you to your next corner. And if you just roll these stitches a little bit upwards, because they look a little funny now, but if you roll them a bit up, you can really see this arch here. It looks really nice. 1, 2, 3, I was doing 19, so this is 4, 5, 19 double crochets, and now you're at the end of the edge exactly. So the next stitch should be the corner here, and then here going to work the same corner as the corner we started with there. So at this edge I'm going to repeat this all the way around, so there's just a number of double crochets, and then here at in the center really pay attention to the double treble stitch, and then go all the way around and close on your first stitch with a slip stitch, and if I recall correctly you can also fasten off. Round 37, I have color 3 on my hook, and we're going to start in the stitch after the join. So here's the join, you see there's the slip stitch, my yarn tail. So then come to the next stitch, insert in there, and start with a standing double crochet. Come to the next stitch and make another double crochet. There you go. We're now going to start the repeat. The repeat is here in the corner. I'm going to start with a new corner stitch. We're going to make a puff stitch in the corner. And the puff stitch is a lot of yarn overs. So yarn over, insert into the space, and pull up a loop. It was once. You're going to do this 4 more times, 5 times in total. So that was 1, yarn over, insert, pick up a loop. That's 2, and really pull up this loop so that all your loops are at the same working height. That's 2, yarn over, insert again. That's 3, over, insert again. That's 4, and yarn over. Oh, that's really full in there. Insert again, and that's 5. Now you do have 11 loops on your hook at this point, but just trust me on that. Then yarn over and pull through all of them, and as you pull through, just push your hook up a bit, otherwise you're going to get it, you might get it stuck somewhere that it doesn't get snagged. So just push your hook up against the top of these loops as you pull through, then you'll pull it through smoothly. And chain 1 to close it all together. That's a puff stitch. You're going to be making quite a few of these on this edge. Now we're going to skip the first stitch, luckily, because you can hardly see it. There, that's the first stitch. Going to skip that stitch and then come to the second stitch and work a double crochet in there. And what you'll notice is your puff stitch will want to go to the back. Just bring it, just pop it with your finger, pop it back forward, because you want the puffs at the front and not the back. So that was 1. You want going to make 4 double crochets. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets. Now we're going to make a puff stitch and 5 doubles. Going to do that twice. So yarn over. So in the next stitch, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the last one 5 times loops, and pull through, chain 1. In the next 5 stitches, double crochet. So here's the next stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double crochets. You can see again your puff stitch, just pop it forward. That was once. Going to do it again. So another puff stitch. Just going to grab some yarn because this is a bit of a yarn eater. That's 1. You can really see I'm bringing up the loop to my working height, so that gives you nice full puff stitches. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pull through, chain 1, and now again 5 double crochets. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pop your puff stitch forward. Another puff stitch. Like I said, you're going to be making a lot of puff stitches. So 1, 2, and you'll be able to count to 5 after this. 3, 4, and oh, come on, 5. pull through, chain 1. Now a double crochet in the next 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, and bring your puff stitch forward again. So here you have 5 stitches in between, and now you've got 6. Now it won't surprise you, another puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take them all off, chain 1, and now again 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pop your puff stitch forward. And once it's forward, it'll stay there, so don't worry about that. But you really have to just pop it forward. So 5 doubles, and now a puff stitch again. So we did that once, I'm going to do it twice. And it really is a yarn eater. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and take them all off, chain 1, and 5 double crochets again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. Puff stitch forward. At this point you should have 5 stitches left before the corner. We're going to work a puff stitch and then 4 double crochets. And then we're at the end of the edge and the end of the repeat. Oh dear, I think oh dear, you hear my cat? Oh, I'm so sorry, he's hungry. It is around dinner time. 2, 3. Oh, he's really complaining. I'm just gonna finish this edge with you guys, and then I'll go and feed him. And complete the puff stitch. The next 4 stitches work a double crochet. 1, 2. Oh, he's really hungry, but he's always thinking that he's starving. That's normal, so never mind. So last puff stitch and finish with 4 double crochets. Your next stitch is here, the corner stitch. See here, this stitch here, in that corner stitch there, you can see that stitch there. You would start a new puff stitch because that corner is the same as this corner. So this puff stitch in the corner, you would now work in that corner stitch. And everything we've just worked along this edge, so all these double crochets and the puff stitches, repeat that on all your other edges also. And of course you'll finish with a puff stitch and then work 2 double crochets before you close here on this stitch here, this first stitch with a slip stitch. And you can also fasten off. And I'll go feed my cat, and then I'll see you guys for the next round. Round 38, last round of this part. I have, if I can just find it, there we go, color 2 on my hook. And we're going to start in the same stitch as the slip stitch join is in, with a standing double crochet. So I'm just going to insert into that stitch, trying to cover the slip stitch in the process. And there we go. Then in the next stitch also work a double crochet. Now we're going to start the repeat unit. I'm just going to open this up here. If you look here, you see here's the puff stitch, and if I pull all of this open, kind of there, you see there's a gap. You see actually here's the stitch, but underneath the stitch, so underneath all of those loops, actually really where I'm poking my hook in there we're going to work 2 double crochets. And that's going to be the first half of the corner. So underneath all of these loops, so really in that gap there, work 2 double crochets. 1, 2, chain 2, which is your new corner space, and now come to the other side of the puff stitch, and likewise if I just pull this open, you see there a little gap here and here. So here's the double crochet, not there, but really before that. See there's a space. In there work 2 double crochets. And then this makes your new corner. So your corner is either side of the puff stitch, between the puff stitch and the first or last double crochet. It kind of depends on how you look at it. So that's your corner made. We're now going to work 18 double crochets, and it's important to also get into that first stitch there, that stitch. So also grab that first one there. 18 doubles, and that'll bring you roughly halfway. 2, 3, 4, and here you see 5 is a puff stitch. That's the puff stitch there. That's 5. And then you see here this loop, that one, that little V there. That's actually the chain 1 from the puff stitch. You do not want that stitch. When I come here, this is a double crochet, so this is your next stitch. So be mindful of all these puff stitches, that you don't work 2 double crochets in the puff stitch. So if you're at the end of the row and you somehow don't seem to have quite a few stitches left, then you know you've worked too many double crochets, because here you see 2, what looks like 2 stitches, but only here the first one is actually a stitch. That second one is the chain 1. So this is the puff stitch, this first one. Then that's the chain 1 you don't want, and then here is the double crochet again. See? And I've hopelessly lost count, of course, but I believe I've still got a few to go, because I need 18. I'll just continue with you guys, because usually I make a jump in a video, but I'll just continue, and at a certain point I'll start counting, and I think I should have about 18. And then that's again the chain 1. So I come to the next stitch, and this will also help to kind of puck up that puff stitch. Now I'm now roughly halfway, so now let me just count where I'm at. So I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, oh, 19, 20. I've worked too many. So this should be 18 double crochets. Let me just count again. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yes, so that's 18 double crochets. And then 4 half trebles. Now that's easier to count. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 half trebles, and then again 18 double crochets, and that should bring you to the next corner. So here this is 1, and then here's 2, and then that's again the chain 1 above the puff stitch. So here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 here is in the puff stitch. That's chain 1. And this is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's the chain 1. This here is 15, 16, 17 and number 18 falls exactly in the last stitch before the next puff stitch. Always a great feeling when things work out exactly. And now you're at the start of your next repeat. So what you do now is here again in that space there, I'm poking my hook in, work 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then come to the other side, and in that space there, I've got my hook, that space there, work 2 double crochets, and then immediately in the first stitch work your first of 18 doubles. So repeat this, go all the way around, and when you get back to the beginning, you're going to close on your first stitch and then cut your yarn. And when you've completed the round, you've also completed part 2. Work away any last yarn tails you might have, so that nice and to the back it's nice and clean. I still have 2 more yarn tails over here, but the rest are already all worked in, and then you're ready for next time. Hope to see you for part 3.